Introverts, do you know that you have a competitive advantage, not just in your creative work, but also in your business? Today, I connected with Margaret Soraya, who is an award-winning Scottish photographer, fine artist, creative thought leader, and just a heck of a person. This woman is proud to be introverted. She unapologetically spends a lot of alone time, even unplugging for weeks at a time. Yet, she still manages to sell out her retreats, sometimes within minutes of putting them up, and runs a loyal, engaged community. Running a business does not have to look one way, and sometimes we forget that we co-create our beautiful lives. So if you feel pressured that you have to be a certain way in order to win in this world, you're going to love Margaret's story, because as she beautifully says, the more that you get to know yourself, the better your work is going to be. She said it better than that, but it's pretty good.
I started to think there's more to the world than this. So I realized who I was as an introvert. And then I started to realize, actually, I've got to get back to this creative side, and I've got to get back to myself. It's really common for people who have quiet voices, who are kind and nice and gentle, to be overlooked. There's so many people that think I don't know my mind because I'm quiet, and they're so wrong. They're so wrong. I know exactly what I want and where I'm going. And it can be an advantage, because you're kind of the one that sneaks up in there unexpectedly.
If you're sitting on an airplane and a stranger asks you what you do for a living, how do you explain that?
Okay, so I live in a really remote part of the Scottish Islands, and I live this amazing creative life. And I suppose what I do is help others through stories of my own adversity. And I suppose I'm just helping them feel better about themselves and to encourage well-being and a creative life.
You didn't use the word photography in that.
No, I didn't, did I? I started as a photographer, so that's where my journey kind of started. That was like 20 years ago now, a little bit more than 20 years. And I know that because my son was born. He's now 21, and I started my business when he was born. So 20 years ago, I started as a photographer.
Now, what I heard through the grapevine, through other podcasts, so tell me if I'm wrong on this, is that you knew you were bent towards creativity at an early age, and you even went to school for, I think, a fine art degree, switched to photography, and then you laid your camera down at one point and walked away for several years only to pick it back up again later. And I wanted to ask you about that, because I think a lot of folks listening to this show are, I could say, called to create, which sounds dramatic, but I'll go there, called to create. But we've all, and myself included, have metaphorically put down our camera, quote, quote, at one point in our life. I just want to talk about that part of your journey, because I think it's really important, because the fact is you picked it up again, and some of us still have our camera laying out.
Yeah, sure. So I was definitely a very creative child. I was really, really encouraged by my mum to be creative. So went off to university, studied painting, photography. Was criticised probably at university, at that level of university, so quite heavily criticised at college, which is very destructive. Something that I'm
Like
very
by the professors or peers,
Yeah.
or where did it come from?
Yeah, from the tutors, basically, yeah. So because I was quiet and not so articulate, I suppose I just couldn't articulate what I was trying to do. I was working very intuitively, which is an amazing thing to do as an artist, to have that intuitive connection to producing whatever it is you're producing as an artist. But they didn't see it like that. So felt criticised. I felt like I wasn't very good at what I was doing. And because I was fairly young and not so self-confident in who I was in my art, I took that on board, and it did lead me to just to stop photographing and painting. There's only so many times you can be told you're not very good when you don't have that baseline confidence, which not many of us do around 20. And so I did leave university a year early, because I was thinking, well, why am I spending money to be here when it's not getting me anywhere, and I can't see a future for it. I got married quite young. Well, now it seems quite young. So I got married, and then I just got sucked into this this need to earn. My marriage was a difficult one in terms of a financially difficult one. So I was with somebody who wasn't necessarily on the same page as me. So I was having to work, and we were moving around a lot. And then I had my children, so I had two little boys. And at that point, I think when you've already stopped being creative,
Yeah.
you don't really stand that much chance unless you've got a lot of support and a lot of, or maybe self-awareness to get through those times of young children and exhaustion and putting yourself last, because that, at the end of the day, that's what so many women do. It's such a common thing. We put ourselves last, we put the children's needs first, we put everybody else's emotional needs first. And that's a really common pattern that we see amongst women. And so that's what I did, basically, until my health was so bad. And I just couldn't keep going. So the children were 5 and 7 at that point. And I realized that I had to do something to change for my own well-being, but also for my own children's sake, because they couldn't continue on that. They learn by seeing what your parents are doing. They learn by copying, don't they? So at some point I realized it was no good, and we couldn't continue like that. So basically I ended the marriage, which was a very, very difficult thing to do. It led to a period of real financial distress when we basically had to leave our house. We left everything pretty much behind. We had to leave the dog, which was awful, the worst thing ever. Everything went. And we went down south, and we just started again, the three of us. So it was then that where I was in this place of having nothing. There was literally a new start, but I still had my photography, so I still had my business, which was really important to me. It was then that I started this period of self-awareness and I started looking at YouTube, and I found it was Simon Sinek. I read I watched his YouTube channel. I think we talked about that, about why. And I started to think, well, why? And then I started to think there's more to the world than this. I'm sure my brain kind of like started firing, and it's almost like it'd been asleep it was the best part of 12 years. And then I started reading, I started watching videos, I started educating myself again, and I started educating myself about myself. So I realized who I was as an introvert, really big turning point for me. And then I started to realize, actually, I've got to get back to this creative side, and I've got to get back to myself, for myself and for my children.
Thank you. I know this is really personal. I appreciate you going there with me. I know this is going to be helpful for a lot of people. I thought it was interesting that you said that after you left and started over again, that's when you started exploring personal development, your self-awareness journey, figuring out who you are. I'm curious, like, if that happened after you left, how did you articulate to yourself, maybe even to your previous husband, your friends, your family, or whatever, that you felt like something was off? If maybe, I'm guessing here, you didn't know exactly what was off. And the reason I'm asking you this is sometimes, I know for me, I've felt in my spirit, my gut, that woman intuition, that I'm just maybe not in the right place. But even though it might logically make no sense, like, Heather, you should be happy. Heather, you should be grateful. Why are you dissatisfied? And learning to trust that again is just kind of scary.
Yeah, it's also scary, like putting a bomb under your life and walking away from things. And, you're thinking about your children. You're thinking, is this the right thing to do for your children?
Right.
Am I responsible for these 3 people? Two of them are my children, one of them's my husband. But this has to happen. It really has to happen, because I've lost myself to the point that it's becoming a health crisis. So I was starting to feel physically unwell. And that was really interesting, actually. And that's been part of my pattern in life, that my physical health has suffered as a result of me losing myself. And I think that is something that is quite common, because when you look at, I don't know if you know much about autoimmune disease, but there's 80% of women suffer with autoimmune disease. And by the time we're sort of in the 40s, 50s, it's starting to show. And there's a lot talked about that's because of the way we are told to be nice. We're told to repress our anger. We're told to look after everybody else's emotional and physical needs. And we're brought up like that. That's how we're
Correct.
it's not a gender thing, it's a society thing. And I'm still learning about that. I'm still learning how not to continue to do that even now. Yeah, it's affecting my health. And when your health is affected, you don't have a life really, do you? Once something happens with your health. So going back to that time where I was starting to see these warning signs, I was thinking, what on earth's wrong with my body? I was putting on weight. I was stressed to the max, basically. I was working 2 different jobs, trying to hold up I had a coffee shop and gallery. I was trying to hold that down. I had a baby. I had a toddler, and I was doing all the work whilst my husband wasn't. So I was carrying everything in life, and that wasn't going. That from everybody else around me, I think could see it very clearly. But I have this thing that when I'm in something, I'm committed to it. I'll stay with it, and that shouldn't be the case. I think if you need to go, you just need to go. And it was for the children, actually, in the end, that I left. But saying that, yeah, I know. And really, I should have just left for myself, because, yeah, just it's that loss of self. It's like, I remember being on the phone to a counsellor as we were going through this process. And the counsellor said to me, you just sound like somebody who's lost everything. And I told her about, I wanted to go surfing again. I was like, I think I was 30 something, 33 or something. And I used to surf when I was 19. I was like, I want to go surfing again. And my husband had said to me, you're a bit old to go surfing. Now, I know. So, yeah. So, yeah, I needed to get that back in my life. I just knew instinctively I couldn't carry on like that. And I think the health thing was the trigger for me.
You know what's interesting, and I haven't really dug too much into this. I wonder if you have. Stephen Pressfield talks a little bit about this. There's the suppression of creativity can cause illness
Yeah.
in your body too. So and I'm guessing here, you tell me, like, it seems as though you have that one element of just a lot of stress and overworked and expectations on you, denying yourself. And then also you have this element where since you were a little girl, you've been an artist. And it sounds like you weren't really able to express any of that creativity. You didn't have an outlet for it. And so it's just like compounded in your body. I mean, what is that book called? Body Keeps Score. I mean, like your body has a physical reaction to stuff. But again, back to the societal issues, we're taught to just take a pill, go to the doctor, get over it.
It's such a huge issue, and I think there's so much more awareness now of it now that we're seeing this massive rise in these chronic conditions, and we're starting to sort of think, well, actually, what is it? What's triggering it? Obviously, the way that we're living is going to be part of that. But it's something that I have been very, very, I've been investigating, shall we say, for quite a long time. I haven't been well all my life, so I've had this chronic fatigue pretty much since I can remember. So my 20s, it got worse as I had the children, obviously. And then it sort of sped up as my life went on, and I'm trying to think, well, what is it actually? Is it eating? Is it something that I've done? But I think the key to it is that you don't blame yourself. It's not your fault. It's one of the big things and one of the big messages. If anybody's living with this, it's not your fault. But it can be traced back to this idea of girls being nice and don't express your anger, don't show your anger, and don't put yourself first. I think it's a big learning curve for me in putting myself first, and it's very difficult to explain because it's been a lifelong journey, this, for me, and I've tried every kind of wellness trick in the book, and I've explored all the health and well-being things that you can do from I've been to India for Ayurvedic treatment, so I've gone to quite a lot of extremes in trying to find out what it is. And actually, recently I have discovered that it's it's a viral thing that I picked up when I was 20, is Epstein-Barr, which has caused these symptoms all my life. So there is actually something there. But then when you look at why some people react all their lives to these viruses and other people don't, there's an element of being sensitive. So being like a highly sensitive person where you're going to react more strongly to things.
Right.
There's also an element to childhood trauma and things that are kept inside you, not expressed. So coming back to your question there, creativity is an outlet, isn't it? Creativity is the way you let things out of your body almost. And if you're not expressing them, creativity is so important. I just think it can like save lives. It's definitely not a luxury. It's definitely not something that we should go, well, I'll do the housework first, take care of the children first, and then I'll be creative. It's got to come first, really.
That's a really, you say it so sweet because you're just the most beautiful, nice human ever, but your words are very intense. I want to highlight what you just said. You just said creativity can save lives. That is a very powerful statement. I know your journey since then, you've worked with countless creative, you sell out these retreats and festivals, people coming from all over to sit with you and other creatives and re-tap back into that space. Can you kind of make a case for that, what you just said about why creativity is actually important? Because it seems like a cutesy wootsy, a nice to have on the surface of like, oh, that's something you do in your spare time, as opposed to deliberately carving out time and making sacred space for the practice.
Yeah, so if you start to think about like stress, anxiety, and depression becoming more and more common in the world that we're living, we're really fast paced. And there's a lot more stress around work. Everything's getting a little bit out of control, I think, in the world. So we're seeing a rise in anxiety and depression, absolutely, alongside these chronic illnesses. So when we start to think about outlets for that, so there's two ways you can go. Also, we can add grief into there as well, actually, because that's quite obviously a powerful one that a lot of people are dealing with. When we start to think, well, how do we manage that? How do we find ways that we can find a positive way to put the emotions that you're feeling when you're really, really depressed or you're grieving? What do you do in that moment? I'm sure there's 100 people listening here that are going, yeah, and that moment when you're in that real state of distress and you do not know what to do. So there's a few ways that you can go here. You could probably turn to alcohol or drugs. I'm being serious here. Yeah, it's actually, we can drown those feelings. We can eat our way out of it, or we can drink our way out of them, or we can just cover them up. And that's probably a really common thing to do. And it's quite understandable. We need to sort of suppress them, and we need to just carry on with the day and keep going. Or we can find a positive thing to put the emotions into. That might sound a little bit woohoo, actually. Where do you put your emotions? But you can
Girl,
create.
I'm woohoo. Have you met me?
Yeah.
I am the wooest woo of woos. Go for it.
Yeah, so you can put these emotions, these when you've got these battles, you can write them down. That's one really amazingly easy thing to do. Just write them down in a journal. Nobody's going to read it. Write it out. If you have got paints around you, you can just make a mess with the paints, and because you're in that moment where you're then switching away from I don't know the technicals behind this, from the side of the brain where emotions are ruling, and the side where that the head is starting to come in, because you're putting some thought into the way that you're writing or the way that you're painting. The mind gets soothed, so you can almost bring yourself out of that real panic state. And when I know I'm speaking from experience here. I'm not an expert on this, but this is my experience of it. If I can just give you an example, my mum died last year, and I went through the most horrendous time where I had to leave my lovely island and go to Manchester, where I was brought up in Manchester, and there's a lot of stuff in Manchester for me. It's a big city. It's awful. It's like somewhere I don't want to go back to ever again. But I had to go there for 4 weeks, and I was living in between places that I could find to stay at the time, and trying to get to the hospital to be with her all the time, knowing that we didn't have long with her. And she was like everything to me. Yeah. So it was going like, how am I going to cope with this? I don't know how to get through the days. I don't even know how to get through the hours here. So I went to, I had nothing. I had just had a bag with me. I'd packed a bag and got on a flight. So I went to the art gallery one day and just picked up some paints and a little note, a watercolor pad. And I'd sit at her bedside and I'd just be painting, because I just didn't know what else to do. I literally didn't know what else to do. And I painted for about 4 weeks. And I think that got me through the time. I really do. I haven't stopped painting since. So it's great. But I think that basically, if we can turn those real times of distress into something that's written or visual or even knitting, where you're moving your hands, there's a mindful aspect to that. And then I think, that there are people that are at the point of not wanting to live anymore. And I do think that creativity can bring you back from that.
The word unapologetic keeps popping up in my head at first glance. And these are just stereotypical statements I'm about to say. A lot of times I know growing up, when you think about like an introverted person, you think about a creative person, you think about somebody who's going to go sit and paint or knit or something like that. When they're dealing with something, there's a kind of a personality type that we staple on that maybe they are soft or maybe weak. And introverted people don't like people, that, maybe they don't want to talk to folks. I mean, there's just horrible stereotypical things that we put on folks. One thing that I have relearned as I'm getting older, maybe this is just an age thing, is some of the strongest people I know are introverted. I'm going to talk about strong at your core, like secure in who they are and unmovable. Sean Tucker, he was on our show last year, and his interview he did with you, which is the first time I ran across you, he described you as a secure introvert. And getting to know you, I can just validate you are like one of the strongest humans that I've ran across, just as far as knowing who the hell you are and being unapologetic about it. And you're like, yeah, I'm introverted, I'm creative, I spend a lot of time painting to myself. And you say it a lot nicer than I'm saying it right now. But again, this may be a cultural thing, I don't know. But I know here where I live, it seems like almost people feel like it's a weakness to be introverted or to be creative or whatever. So that's messy, Margaret. I just threw up all over you. If you can sort that out and comment on it, I'm just curious your take.
It sounded pretty good to me. I think it's really common for people who have quiet voices, who are kind and nice and gentle, to be overlooked and to be. I certainly suffer with that. I still suffer with that. There's so many people that think I don't know my mind because I'm quiet, and they're so wrong. They're so wrong. I know exactly what I want and where I'm going. And it can be an advantage, because you're kind of the one that sneaks up in there unexpectedly. You tend to find that, yeah. You tend to find that with introverts. They have a plan, and it usually takes a little bit longer and it's a little bit slower, but the plan is always there, and it's always it's quite solid. You find a commonality with that with introverts. And I think that I wasn't always like this. As a child, all I remember as a child is being told to come out and join in a little bit more. I'd be sitting in a room drawing by myself, and my family would like, "Will you come and join in? And will you talk a bit more? Would you?" So it wasn't always. I haven't always been as secure as I am now. It was that period when I was learning about introversion. So I did quite a lot of learning. I read Susan Cain's book, Quiet, the Power of Introverts, which was just pivotal for me. So since then, I carried on learning about it. And then that's been really, really helpful in helping me understand that it's a strength and it's not a weakness. And actually, if you look at like the Chinese, they see quiet as wisdom and strength. So I think we're just living in the wrong culture. But certainly, as I've grown, I just started to own it, and the more that I have done that, the more time I have let myself be quiet when I've needed to be quiet, because in those quiet times as an introvert, that's where you gather all your inspiration. That's where you do your best work. And the more that you let yourself do that, the stronger your work becomes, and the more that you start to realize that is really important. And you can't change yourself to fit in. It's really important to not to fit in and then lose yourself. So if we try and become more extroverted, because that's how Western society, they think that extrovert and loud equals better, which is just the way it is over here. That's just the way it is, and we just have to accept that. But I think it's really important to accept that maybe you're not going to quite fit in, but you have to be yourself. You can't suppress who you are. And I've just run with that now. And really, the more that I've run with that and the more that I talk about that, what's really interesting is the amount of people that approach me when I talk about it, because you don't get many introverts that stand up and talk about being introverted, because they don't want to be on a stage, do they?
Again, maybe a generalized statement, but had an aha when you were just speaking right now. You were talking about people's tendency to kind of drag the introvert into the conversation, be like, speak up, join in, or whatever. And it's this perception that, oh, we're going to do that for them because they need to be a part of it and they don't want to miss out and all that. But really, it's probably validation more for the crowd, because it's like, how are you okay not being with us and talking to us? And, why are you so okay with being yourself? And that security in your skin, man. If there's one thing in my life that I've been after, it's that settledness of self and figuring out again, is Heather okay with Heather? And is she okay just in her body? Is she okay with her opinions? And I'm picturing you in this room. I don't know why you're in this room, but in my head, you're this 30-something-year-old mom who just took a bet on herself and left everything. And you're on the self-discovery journey, that getting settled in your skin and that confidence to fully accept how you move into this world. You mentioned the books, you mentioned the personal development. Was there any other key pivotal points in that part of your journey that kind of helped you launch you into where you're at right now?
I think it was taking the time. I think one of the big moments that I see in my life that have got me to where I am is taking these moments out of my life and saying, I need this time to go and heal, to go and discover myself, to go and be myself. So I started going to India. I mentioned Ayurvedic treatment. I started going to India, I think 2016 it was.
Why India?
So I'd read in an article in the Telegraph magazine about somebody who had gone to India to do Ayurvedic Panchakarma treatment for 2 or 3 weeks. And she'd done it for her migraines. So at the time I was trying to do anything that would stop my migraines, because they were horrendous. They were literally one after the other. And so I was like, well, okay, it said that she went there and she had this treatment. It was quite a harsh treatment, but she came back and she didn't have migraines for the year. So I was like, I'm going to do it. So and that was a time when it was just me and the boys. So it was quite a big thing to leave them. And probably the first time that I'd kind of gone, well, do you know what? I'm gonna take this time for me, and I'm going to go and try this. And luckily, by that point, I had a very supportive partner and a nice lady who had come to live with me to help me look after the boys, because I was traveling a lot for work. So, and they were both, yeah, go and do it. So I think it was probably the first time that I'd stepped up for myself and gone traveling by myself to go and find some answers, and to have, anybody that knows about Ayurvedic treatment, is a Panchakarma treatment where you basically go to a place. There's lots of places in India that does this, and it's about 2 or 3 weeks. It's a thorough detox, cleanse of the body, but also massage. So lots of massage of the body. Part of it is it's a mind and body thing. So you're doing a bit of stretching, but other than that, not much. So you're not allowed to move too much. You don't go out walking, and you have this time to think. So you're in this place, we're not traveling about India in the heat or anything. You're in this place and you're facing yourself, and people find that really hard because I think one of the things that people would like do anything to avoid is to sit in a room in silence with themselves for 10 minutes.
Why do you think that is? What is it about that?
Because you have to you start to face yourself, and for some people that's a really hard thing, and to be alone with your thoughts is something that we're not used to anymore because there's so much noise in the world, there's so much connectivity, we can barely go for 10 minutes without our phones, without a ping going on the phone. So we're so used to that now, it's very hard for us to face any sort of quiet or silence. And it's in those moments that we have these huge realizations and an understanding of ourselves. So I think that sitting in silence alone for 2 or 3 weeks, which is what it was massive for me. It was huge steps forward. I would just take a journal and I'd do a lot of writing. And as the years went on, I stopped even taking my camera. The first time I took my camera, I thought I'll do lots of photography. But again, that was just a distraction. I was just trying to distract myself with things. So I was reading a lot and writing a lot. And I think those times have been so amazing for me. That's really moved me on creatively, but also in self-awareness.
And you still do that? Like you went to, tell me if I'm wrong, India last year, didn't you?
I did, yeah. So it was like I stopped, obviously during COVID when that happened.
So
It was
cool.
kind of like...
You're like the only person I know who like seriously, you're just like, yeah, I'm gonna go to India for a month just because. I'm like, you can do that, which we can do that, but nobody does it. I'm sorry to interrupt you, but it's so badass.
But isn't it great? And I think it's a shame that we have to get to these crisis points before. And really, I was doing it out of crisis. Having a migraine every 2 days is not like normal, or shouldn't be. We shouldn't think that's okay to live like that and then not treat ourselves because, I don't know, we don't have the money for it, or we don't have, we're not putting ourselves first, basically.
Yeah.
But it does tend to come to that, really. And I just see this pattern so often with women. It's getting to this sort of age where it's almost, it's not too late, but you're putting plasters on things where I think that possibly, I'm just taking a guess here, but possibly when you have children, for me, there was such a huge strain on the body and my life. It almost broke me for years after. And actually, if you look at, what actually pregnancy and caring for a child does to your body and what it takes from the nutrients in you, you're years before you're back to your own health. And we haven't had a break at that point because we've been looking after these.
Yeah.
I think that it's possibly, it would be lovely if we could see more women having, breaks when they had young children or when they needed it before it got to these really, health crises that do come along.
Well, and it not be seen as a weakness, like, oh, you're weak because you need a break, because whether it's self-imposed or whatever, but after I had my girls or whatever, it's just like, okay, if you're not back at it and doing it or whatever, are you a successful businesswoman? Do you have a purpose in this world? I mean, like, just again, it just may be my own narrative or whatever, but it's like you're expected to go. And it's like if you need a break, you're less than or you're weak or whatever. So the normalization of that, men and women both, is so important. That again, that's why I just love what you've been emphasizing in your brand with people is this I don't give two F's kind of thing. Again, you're so much nicer than that. This is Heather's interpretation of it, of like, take a break, do you, sit with yourself, be quiet if you want to be quiet, and don't apologize if it takes longer than most people are comfortable with.
Yeah, and I hear you there, Heather. It's like it's this constantly evolving, faster world that we're in as well, isn't it? That's really not helping matters, is it? We sort of feel like we have to keep up with all the. One of my biggest battles has been the content creation, and how do you keep up with that? How do you keep up with your business? And but then I think there are times in life when you just get stopped in your tracks and you go, well, actually, what is important in life here, And I think that those times are, it's really important to realize that we've got to be living the moment today and to be healthy and to enjoy life rather than just running through it, because there isn't a finish line here, is there? We don't want to be running towards that finish line, really. We want to be enjoying today. But there's a lot of pressures, isn't there?
Let's talk about that aspect of it. That's one thing, that you're a brilliant artist. Okay, so award-winning photographer, gorgeous, unbelievable, like stuff you would just see in a freaking, like, hanging on a gallery type I mean, holy crap, your work is just beautiful. Your photography, and then as of late getting into the painting, it seems like you've been, I don't remember when you said you started it, seriously, not long. You were meant to do this. You were meant to create. It's obvious through the product of what you create. But then you put a comma on that and you made a choice to start building community around other creators who move through the world like you do. And that's another thing you've just really excelled at. Your community loves you. They are very engaged. I could go as far to say, I know you've changed their lives. You put up a retreat or something, it immediately fills up, which I know people listening to this probably just makes you sick hearing that, because that's everybody's problem. They're like, how do we sell tickets? How do we get people involved? And you've figured out how to connect with people and build trust and also take time for yourself. And so it seems opposite, because we're told that in order to build successful communities and business, we need to be on all the time. And you're proving otherwise. So high level, I'd like to hear your philosophy around community and online and how you've been able to do that. And then I have some tactical questions as far as anybody else who's listening who may want to fill rooms with their people, but they're just not hitting the mark. So high level philosophy first. How do you put your arms around the online stuff?
Well, I think first of all, the reason that I wanted to do that was there's two reasons, because this is my business. Is I want to live my life creatively. So at first it was like, well, how do I do that? What's the container for that? How do I earn from this? Is it just sales? Is it helping other people? Is it teaching? And it started off as teaching, and then I started to have this real desire.
Photography, right?
It started off teaching photography, yeah. So it started off being like workshops around Scotland. And I was thinking, well, okay, I just want to share Scotland with people. Then I was like, no, it's deeper than that. It's more than that. I want to help people. I want to help people deeper than just teaching them photography. I want to show them how being themselves means that their photography or their art or whatever it is will improve, rather than, you can't teach like technicals and people will get better. It doesn't work like that. Although a lot of people think that the only way that you'll get better as an artist is by knowing yourself and being more genuine and
Right.
true to the way that you live your life. And I think that's how I've got to the point where, yeah, I feel like my photography, it's very joyful. It flows. It's in line with me as a person, and it's all because I've done the work on myself. It's nothing to do with this technical. I mean, you learn the technicals, okay, and then you can just do them. But the actual bit about, well, your art is a reflection of you as a person, and if you don't know yourself, then it's going to be very difficult to be a good artist. So, so I wanted to. Then I thought, well, I want to go a bit deeper with people, so I'll start doing things around that and start around teaching, like finding your voice, I called it. And we were starting to go deeper, and I was starting to really enjoy that. And I just have this great desire to help people feel better, be part of a community, and live better and feel more joy in their creativity and find themselves as well. So that's how it all started. And I think because it's quite a genuine desire to help people, it shows. There's no. I always used to think that was a terrible salesperson. I used to say that, really bad at sales. I forget to do sales things. I don't even know how to make a funnel, these funnel things. I don't even know what that is. I keep going, what is a funnel? Sales pages, and I forget to put sales posts up on social media. I was terrible with my newsletter until I started
You don't have to. That's what's so
Yeah.
wild about your work is, when you and I first like chatted or whatever, you're like, yeah, I sell out on my stuff. I put it up and it sells out. And I'm like, what? Who what a freaking gift. And I'm hearing you say you're accrediting that to two things, and tell me if I'm wrong on this. You said earlier, the more you get to know yourself, the better your work is going to be. So it sounds like you believe that this is a product of you being comfortable in your own freaking skin, knowing who you are. And the second thing that you said is the want to help them. They genuinely feel that. Is that really just what you credit it to, or is there something else? Because us, we want to run to the tactics.
I think I think what I credit it to is that I've always been very open and honest and vulnerable on my social media. So I don't have a massive following. I have a fairly decent following on Instagram, but it's so highly engaged. And I think that the reason is that the people that get to know me understand that it's real. There's no fakeness at all here, and I'm very, very open about what's happened in my life. So part of what I've really only just started to understand is that the way that I actually bring across all of these things that I want to teach people is through my own stories. So I have to be very open about that. But I have so many stories because I've had a lot of adversity in my life. So it's just it's a blessing, isn't it? And if you can see your adversities like that, then that's a great thing. And I do, because I think if I hadn't had the experiences, I wouldn't be able to have empathy or understanding from the people that I want to help. You can't help somebody through something if you haven't been there yourself. So everything that has happened in my life, there's been a lot of hard things, and I've found ways through, and I want to share that now. So what I'm trying to say is that I think the honesty and the openness and this idea of vulnerable, I'm not sure about that word, but being open is very, very powerful for people. And when they can feel it, people can feel when you're just trying to sell something or when it's not quite real. So I wonder if that's part of it. So you're right. I would simply send out a newsletter, and my retreats probably for the past 5 or 6 years, some of them sold out within a couple of hours. And I don't really know what to credit that. I was just so grateful.
Happy. I love that. I love it. I love it. And I think it's a testament to what you're teaching here about this self-discovery process and really, really honoring it and making it a priority. Not only is it healing, but also too, it's good for your business. It's good for your art. It's good for your community. It's not selfish. It's something that actually gives to the world, because you're being able to show up as the full expression of you and who you are uniquely designed to be. And I want to I know I have a couple minutes left with you, and I'm going to open a big old door.
Go on.
Because why not? I feel like you're really in tune with, I don't know if it's God, muse, whatever you want to call it, just spirit in general. And I know water is really important to you, and it's almost magical what you see through your lens and are able to take a photo of or paint. It's just like you see something else. And I'm curious, like, your kind of guidance thoughts around tapping into something other than self. I know you know this about me. I'm come from kind of church religion, got away from all that, but I'm actively just trying to find God again and again and again through everything. And for me, creativity is church, and it is religion, and it is all of the things, because that's where I kind of refound God again. And I'm not even sure if you would use that language or where your stance is and all of that, but when you're tapped into something else or whatever, what is your relationship with that thing, and what have you learned about it?
I think
that's a deep ass question.
That's a deep one.
Yeah. Sorry.
I think one of the things that's really important to me, I don't know if this is going to answer the question or not, is kindness, and I think that is really, really important. Kindness and supporting other people is very, very important to me, and I think that provides a framework for what I'm doing. And I think you can only be like really there for other people when you've looked after yourself. So this kind of like system of building myself up first, then helping other people kind of works together. So I suppose that's what's important to me. That's what's important to me. So when I'm talking about building myself up, it's tapping into my childhood, the things that I love in life, the things that really touch my soul, as you say, which is the sea, and then starting to understand where does that come from? Where why does some people have this real kind of connection with things? Is it something bigger? Is it just something that you're just attracted to? And I don't think it is. I think there's something much deeper going on when we have something that we love. And for me, it's the sea, and it goes back to childhood. It goes back to a lot of things in my life come back to my mum and her support and absolute support and love of me. So we would spend a lot of time in Holland, where she was brought up, where she was Dutch, and we would go to the beach, and we would find this joy, this absolute openness of joy and happiness. I think happiness is probably a good word, by the sea, in the waves, jumping in the waves. So, and that informs where I find my inspiration. So inspiration is a funny word, but that's what the place I feel connected. So the sea is really, really important, and helping other people find their thing, I think is the big thing for me as well. Don't know if that answered the question at all.
I'm slightly embarrassed to admit this to you, but it's true. I'm kind of afraid of water. I didn't, it's just, I don't know. It's getting in water is very scary for me. Like I'll do it, but my mind automatically goes towards like even like ocean and stuff. Like there's a shark. And I know it because I just felt it and I didn't feel anything, drowning, all that stuff. But as someone who's just very gentle in the way that you move through the world and so forth, I just think it's so interesting how you can go in such a big, strong body of water and find peace in it. And the way that you view that, is obviously there's history there, but also too, I'm just curious, like what you kind of see and feel and experience in that, because I don't know if it's something I need to work on or what, but one day I'm going to stand in the water with you. That's going to be my goal. We're going to stand in an ocean together.
I think it's personal. I think it's personal. It's tied up with your experiences that you've had in those places, probably when you were younger. So for me, it was great joy. I was a big swimmer when I was young as well. So I'm very, very used to, very confident, very used to the water. Whereas other people, they're just not. I don't like forests. I like trees.
Yeah, I love trees, girl.
Yeah. I sort of feel closed in. We're lucky that we don't have any trees on this island that I live on, so it's okay. But I do think it is tied up with your own experiences and how you feel, how your soul feels when you're in that. So you can either feel open and uplifted, or a little bit fearful. And I find, trees and forests not a good place. But the sea for me is just so peaceful. At the moment, I'm kayaking mostly, rather than swimming. It's just a little bit too much for my body at the moment, and it's just telling me don't go into the real cold at the moment.
Yeah.
So I go out kayaking when the wind's really low, and I just can feel like, I don't know if you kayak at all, but when you get really, really low wind days and the water's just like a sheet of glass and it just gently bobs. So sometimes I'll just sit in the kayak and just let it bob up and down. And so it's not, when I say kayak, I don't go for miles. I'll probably go for a little paddle and round and back. And it's about that experience of feeling completely at peace and completely at one with nature and being alone, literally in the middle of nature. It's really important to me.
I haven't asked this question in a few years. I used to ask it at the end of every episode, and I don't know why, but it's coming up for me now. So it's a little cheesy, but again, that woman in the room who just left everything with her boys and figuring yourself out again. You've lived a lot of life since then. You've grown a lot. You've created a lot, had a lot more hardships and heartache. But damn, you've come on the other side of it. And I hope you're so proud of yourself. It's just amazing what you've created and put into this world. I'm curious if you were to sit with that young woman again and tell her something that you've learned over these years, what would you choose to tell her?
Oh, that's a good one, isn't it? I think it's really important to do that, actually. I think it's a really good thing to do, to go back and to just to realize how far you've come. Because
Mm.
sometimes I'm out here and I'm just driving to the shops, and there's like mountains and lochs and the sea and this peacefulness, and I've got this beautiful home here, and I've built this amazing life. And I have this kind of sense of, like, if you were to go back to that 35-year-old who was sitting with this carnage around me and nowhere to live, just to like reassure myself that it was going to be okay, and to be kind to yourself, I suppose, is probably the biggest message that I'd want to tell myself.
It's beautiful. I want to give you an opportunity to share where people can connect with you, but also I want to acknowledge you that you are just a complete badass. I have so much respect for, again, not just the product of your creativity, but you being willing and strong enough to live a creative life and show the rest of us what that can look like to live in real freedom, a real settledness of self, your way of making a community and a home for people who feel unseen and feel like maybe they need to change to be accepted. You've just built something really amazing that I know means so much to so many people. So thank you for the work that you're putting out in the world. If someone is obsessed with you and like, I need more Margaret in my life, where would you point them to? And is there anything you're really excited about that you would like them to participate in?
Yeah, so recently I have started on Substack, so I've put everything into Substack. I'm just Margaret Soraya on there, so you can come and find me on there. In fact, I'm Margaret Soraya on Instagram and YouTube as well, on my website, so it's very, very easy. I'm really excited at the moment about, I've been making these, I've called them visual meditations, but it's something I started doing years ago, and I've found this pattern actually that I look back on the things that I started doing a long time ago, and there's like this thread of I just needed a bit more time, or I just needed a bit more time to develop those things. So I think it's a great thing to look back on the things that you wanted to do, and to continue with them. So I've picked that back up, and I wanted to share more of my life on the Isle of Harris, because it's
Gorgeous.
it is, yeah, it's like the most stunning place to live, and it's a lovely life, just a wonderful life. So I wanted to show that more, so literally show it without getting tied up in this idea of having to edit lots of video and talk to camera and then run. When you're making a video about yourself and you have to put the camera down, then run down the road and then make sure you're in position, get the audio right. That's kind of like doesn't kind of work with my message. My whole message is like living in the moment, and that doesn't work. I've come up with this new process of just using the footage, but with a narration over it, with some music that's been commissioned by musicians. So I really like using that as well. And then the narration is about certain things that people might be going through in their lives, and to help them through these difficult times. So putting that all together. So I'm aiming to be doing more and more of those, popping them onto YouTube and to Substack. So I'm really excited about that at the moment.
They're good. They're good. You have like the soothing voice for it, and it's beautiful. I'll make sure that is linked up in the show notes. Very last question. What is something in your life that you are currently questioning that you do not have the answer to?
It's a difficult one to talk about, but I'm questioning this idea of money, and something that we don't talk about. Like, okay,
Oh,
yeah, so I'm going to talk about that for a minute. But this idea that yeah, I feel like I want to earn more, but then you have this feeling, oh, you shouldn't be wanting that, should you? Because that's not something that we talk about, and that's not something that we should be striving for as a woman, maybe. So I'm questioning the way the two things, this living this amazing life and the desire to earn more. But when I rationalize that out, I don't think there's anything wrong with that, because I think that when we have more income, we can take care of ourselves more, and we can take care of our family. So that is just something. I think it's just something that's going through my mind at the moment. How do I marry those two things? Yeah, I'm not sure. So yeah, obviously I'm questioning it because I can't quite form the words there.
Anybody in the back, say amen, hallelujah to that. Totally. Because, too, what we're told is in order to have more money, you have to work more. And I don't know about you. I mean, I don't know about you. I know this about you. For me, freedom is the most important thing. I don't like being constrained. I don't like being told where I have to be, when I have to be there. That's why I have my own business. Like, freedom is everything. And then, the more money, the more ways you're able to make an impact in this world, take care of yourself, like you said. So it's that narrative that's like, in order to make more, you have to work more. And I know that's BS, but it's deep conditioning.
Yes. Yeah, it is. It's conditioning, isn't it? And I think one of the things that I have been working on is this idea of energy versus output. So what's gonna take the energy out of me? So I haven't had much energy in the past year, so I've been trying to figure out, well, what is it that I can do that's going to produce the same result, but with a more positive energy even, or whether maybe online courses are going to take more out of me, or so looking at work like that. So maybe that's part of the answer in there somewhere.
Well said. Well said. Well, thank you for your time today. This was incredible.